Morning YouTube. Got a 2004 Chevy Trailblazer here. We're going to be changing the thermostat. It actually sits behind the alternator, so we're going to remove the alternator. I'm going to remove the battery to get that out of the way too, just so I have more room to work. Yeah, so this is what I'm armed with. Deck's cool or compatible, a drain pan to catch some fluid, obviously the thermostat, an assortment of tools here. I got a 3/8 drive ratchet and a pipe to remove the serpentine belt. You don't really need 2 3/8 ratchets, but I just leave that one on. Various extensions, 3/8 universal, 13mm socket, 10mm socket, 15mm socket, an 8mm wrench, a 10mm wrench, and a 15mm wrench. Those are the tools I'm going to have on hand. I think those are like the bare minimum that you need to get this job done. If I grab anything else in the video for tools, I will let you know, but we're going to get started. Real quick before we get started, I'm not responsible if you muff your car up. I'm not responsible if you get injured. Videos for educational purposes only. Use it for what you will. Just don't blame me if things go wrong. Thanks. I'm also going to be timing this to let you know approximately how much time it took. Obviously I'm shooting video, so it's taking me a little longer, but it's about 7:45 a.m. start time, so here we go. So the first thing you want to do is to disconnect your battery. Should be an 8mm. My daughter has a stereo in her car, so this is obviously not 8mm over here on a positive, but it's already loose. Hers is actually a 15, so, but we'll go ahead and do that. There's a 13mm hold down bolt right there, the nut down there that you got to get off to actually remove the battery. So we'll get that stuff removed and I'll be right back. So we got the battery out of the way. The next thing I'm going to do is take off this serpentine belt off the alternator. Battery only took a couple minutes to take out. There is a belt tensioner down there. It accepts a 3/8 drive ratchet right there, and you're going to want to put pressure towards the battery side. This is where the length of pipe that fits over your ratchet comes in handy, just to give you some leverage to be able to turn that tensioner in that direction, taking tension off the belt, allowing us to remove the belt from the alternator. And you want to just slowly let that retract, and I'm just going to go ahead and just leave that set up right there since I have an extra ratchet, and we'll go ahead and get working on taking the alternator off. So to remove the bracket above the alternator, to get easier access to the 2 upper alternator bolts, there's a 15mm bolt here, a 15mm bolt here, a 10mm here, and then there's one 15 behind the bracket itself. Use an extension to get back here, and I'll try to get in here and show you. So the socket goes on it, and we'll just turn it out like that. So we'll get the bracket off, and I'll be right back. Oh, also, this plastic thing clip here was already broke on this vehicle. Doesn't seem to bother anything. It's been like that forever. So if yours is broken, don't worry about it. I'm not worried about it. Doesn't seem to be going anywhere. Just thought I'd mention it. Okay, so the trick to not losing this last bolt down behind the alternator when you loosen it up, it should be the last bolt you take out. Take the bracket for the AC hose, move it out of the way, and bring this bracket back as you're loosening that bolt. So when the bolt finally comes loose like that, it doesn't fall behind the alternator down into the engine bay somewhere. Ask me how I know. And now that we got the bracket out of the way, you can see the 2 upper alternator bolts. There's one more alternator mounting bolt down below. I'll show you an easy way to get that one as well too. So these are also 15mm, so we'll go ahead and get these off, and then I'll show you how to get that bottom one. Okay, to make this bottom one easier to get off, this bottom bolt on this alternator, I came in through the wheel well. There's a gap right here. Get a nice straight shot over to the bolt. I used various extensions to get over there. I could probably get away with one less extension if I had to, but it just makes it so much easier so you can get a full ratchet on it. You're not working tight in the engine bay. So we'll get this off, check back. If you had to get this bolt, if you had to get the bolt and you didn't have the extensions, you can get it from underneath, but you literally only get like 2 clicks on the ratchet. It's kind of tight to get this bottom bolt. Much better off going through the fender well. Alright, once you get the alternator unbolted here, on the back of the alternator, underneath this boot right here, you're going to find a 10mm, and then you're going to find this plug on the other side here. You got to remove those, and then we'll be able to take the alternator right out. Cool thing about having your battery out of the way, the extra couple minutes, you got a nice place to put all your bolts. Pulling the alternator out, I found it was easier to rotate it this way, pull it towards the battery, came right up for me. Now that we have the alternator out of the way, we can see the actual thermostat housing right here, and there is a 10mm bolt here, and there's one down underneath that we got to get to. So first thing we want to do though is we got to disconnect this radiator hose here. Please have a catch pan, save the environment, don't let the crap run all over the ground. Put a catch pan down. Some people like to disconnect the lower radiator hose, drain the entire system. I'm going to try not to lose as much coolant as possible, so I'm just going to disconnect it from here and just see whatever catches in the catch pan. I'll just replace it with fresh. Okay, so I started with, I haven't drained the coolant yet. I just wanted to make sure that these 10mm were even going to come loose before I even bothered taking that hose off. You know, I don't want any problems if they round it out or whatever. I don't want a big mess and then not be able to proceed with the job. But it's kind of hard to show you. It's one short extension, like a 3-inch extension or whatever, and the 10mm down underneath there to get that bottom bolt. You know, I just made sure that it was gonna loosen up. So I mean, obviously it's loose right there. You can see what I used here, and I just left it on. Check this top one here. Okay, so both of those are going to loosen up. So I'm going to go ahead and disconnect this now and see where we go. Okay, so this bottom bolt, once you got it loose enough, just try to work it out with your fingers. I had to kind of reach behind here because I don't want to drop it, but I was able to get it out without dropping it. So now I'll get the top one out. I didn't drain the coolant first because this damn clamp is, it's actually like on the back side. I got to get on it and squeeze it, so I'm just going to disconnect the whole entire thermostat housing and bring it up here and work on it. If you do happen to do it this way and you don't disconnect the hose, coolant will start coming out once you get those bolts loose. Just please make sure you have a wide enough catch pan to catch the mess, so you're not just letting that antifreeze go everywhere. Okay, so by getting the thermostat housing off, I was able to get my locking pliers up in here, squeeze that clip. I don't know why they had it rotated on the other side, so I couldn't pull it first. But either way, I got it squeezed now. I'll go ahead and pop this housing out of the hose. I apologize for not having this tool present in the beginning of the video, but something you're definitely going to need. So if your hose is stuck to your thermostat pipe here, just a little persuasion with a small flathead screwdriver around should actually loosen it up a little bit. Just be careful not to muff your hose up. Alright, so we were able to slide it out. Once I gave a little persuasion with the small flathead, I left everything clamped right there, and I wedged the hose in there so I wouldn't lose any more coolant. So now I'm just going to go ahead and pry out the gasket. That is the black ring you can see around the hole here. We'll get this guy out of the way, and we'll put the new gasket in place, and we'll get the new thermostat housing all in place and get it bolted up. Alright, so our thermostat housing came with a new gasket already installed, so we're just going to go ahead and pop this in. Alright, when you're going to go mount the new thermostat housing in place, I slid the bottom bolt through the housing so that way when I go to put it in, I don't risk dropping that bolt down there. Fortunately, they're generous to give you enough threads so you can actually twist this in and get it started without the top one being completely lined up. I'm able to get quite a few threads started in this bottom one, so you don't end up dropping that bolt, and then it should just hang there for you. All right, when tightening these bolts, I would alternate top and then bottom just so you're snugging them up evenly. Just remember that these are only 10mm bolts, so you don't have to put the fear of God into them. All right, just get them good and tight, and just don't snap them off, because that would really suck. All right, so now with the least mess as possible, I'm going to go ahead and try to drop that hose down and make that connection. And then I got to reset that clamp. All right, so you can see I got the clip successfully slid back on. There's a catch right here. If you squeeze it, it'll catch here, and then I'll leave it a little bit open, and then you can get another bite on it and give it the full squeeze to slide over, and then just let it go. So having it in this position here, whoever has the unfortunate pleasure of doing this job in the future will be able to disconnect this hose before taking the housing off. If your clamp is already here and you want to take this hose off first and drain it down into the bucket, that's fine. Like I said, my clamp was on the other side. It's kind of hard to squeeze it, so I took the housing off first. But these are all snugged up. This is in place, this is in place. So now we can go ahead and toss the alternator back in. All right, so we got the alternator set back in place. The 10mm underneath your little rubber boot is back on. So you can put your little rubber boot back on. Got your clip in on the side. And we'll go ahead and get it bolted up. Just one more time, when you're dealing with that bottom alternator bolt, this is a setup I used. Just come right in through the wheel well and get that bottom bolt. It's a long bolt. It'd be very frustrating, like one click at a time. And now we got the alternator all snugged up. It's once again time to put the bracket on and deal with this back bolt here. Get it set up so you don't drop it, and just line it up with the back hole, and then just put it on that way so you don't end up dropping that bolt. Trust me, you do not want to drop that bolt down behind the alternator and have to tear it all apart again to get that bolt out. You don't have to snug this one down all the way, because you still got to line the front holes up, but definitely deal with that back bolt first. So we got the 315mm and the 10mm, got the bracket bolted back up. Now all we have to do is just slip this serpentine belt back on. Make sure it's properly around all your pulleys. If you need a diagram, it should be on your fan shroud right there, in case the belt fell a little bit more than just off the alternator. But we'll get that on. Like I said, it's just a matter of putting your ratchet on the tensioner and just applying tension over here towards the battery tray. It'll loosen the belt up enough to be able to put it on the pulleys. Alright, so now we got the belt all installed properly, making sure that the routing is proper, making sure that it goes around all the pulleys in the center of the pulleys, so we don't have any problems when we go to start this up. Now we'll just go ahead and put the battery back in. We got the battery back in place, remembering to do the positive first and then the negative. We got the bolt, the hold down bolt, 13mm tightened down. That's all set over there. We got the overflow topped off with the 50-50 mix of coolant. I'm going to go ahead and just top off the radiator with a 50-50 mix of coolant, and we'll start her up and see how she does. Alright, we got her all topped off here. You can see the air bubbles coming out of the system. Like I said, just keep an eye on your reservoir for a while. You know, there'll be air coming out. But other than that, I mean, it took a full gallon 50-50 mix, so you know, and I left, like I said, I lost about a gallon. But I'm gonna get this cap back on. I'm gonna take it for a road test, bring it home, check for leaks. If this video helped you at all, hit the like button, subscribe to my channel. I'd really appreciate it. Have a great day. Oh, by the way, the job, even shooting the videos, took me a couple hours. So, you know, if you're not shooting videos, you might get it done a little faster. But set aside at least a couple hours for this job and you should be good. Thanks. Please dispose of your antifreeze. To use the antifreeze properly,